Now I want to ask you this question. How many of you know the preamble of the Constitution? Preamble by heart. How many of you used to know? Okay. Why'd you forget it? I'll tell you why you forgot it. There's all those verbs in there. You don't know whether you're providing, promoting, securing, establishing, ordaining, or what. And in what order. So we developed a nice little way to memorize the preamble. Other people have other ways, but this is our way of doing it. It's with sign language. Now, this is not ASL. This is not Indian Sign Language. We've told that. This is just our slang. So I'm going to go through it once with you, and then invite all of you to stand and go through it with me. That's that deal. This is the way we do it. We, the people of the United States, were united in order to forming a more perfect, what's this? Union. Now you push it down. Establish, what's this? Justice, scales of justice. Establish justice. Now you make an umbrella to ensure domestic tranquility. What we're all going to be doing tonight. Right? Now you feed the chickens. Provide for the common defense. Promote the general welfare. Now you grab it. And secure the blessings of, what's this? Liberty, statute, liberty, to ourselves and our posterity. Make you have. Do, what's this? Ordain and establish, now you unroll it, this Constitution for the United States of America. Are you ready? Stand up. Now, folks, I know this is kind of whatever, but hey, we're all friends here, right? We're all friends. Okay. Here we go. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. All right, good. You go home, you practice that with your family and your grandchildren. You'll never forget it. Your grandkids will come say, Grandpa, can we do the preamble? It's kind of interesting. Did you know that, do you remember that committee on detail, the first committee? When it came out of there in its rough form, here was the preamble. We, the states of, name all 13 states, do hereby ordain this Constitution. And Gouverneur Morris looked at that and said, that doesn't excite anybody. And he said, this preamble's got to sell the document. So it was Gouverneur Morris who rewrote it. This is a beautiful paragraph outlining the 6 great purposes of a good government. And they're all there. There's 6 of them if you want to study a little closer. It's amazing. I want you to look, though, at the change he made from we the states to we the people. Sometimes we miss the significance of that. We talked a little bit about this morning. Why would he say we the people? Because what's happened here, folks, when they adopted this Constitution, first of all, the states did not adopt it. It was the people who adopted it. It wasn't the state legislatures that ratified it. Did you know that? It was conventions of the people in the states. Because if you're going to change the government and redistribute power, first of all, where does the power have to come from? The people. So you root the power in the people as you then redistribute it under the new Constitution. Hence, we the people. You've got the roots of power down where power really is. Isn't that interesting? Sometimes people will say the states created the federal government. No. There's no power in the states to do that. Isn't that interesting? We the people. There's significance in this. All right. Now, as we start to go through elements of the Constitution on page 34, every once in a while someone, doesn't happen too often much anymore, but it used to, someone will say, hey, I've been to Washington, I've seen the White House, and I've seen the Supreme Court, and I've seen Congress in session, been in the gallery when they've been going. I've even been over to the National Archives building and seen the Constitution itself in its beautiful humidified case. You're telling us we're losing it? Seems to me like it's working. Then they'll say, can you just give us an example? Yeah, we got lots of examples. We don't mind giving you. And you don't have to go very far into the document to find a real good example. How about Article 1, Section 1, Clause 1? In other words, the very first sentence after the preamble. And here it is, next to the picture there on page 34. All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and House of Representatives. Well, that's a pretty harmless statement. You and I have probably read that many times. All right, let's see what that really means. Let's take it apart a little bit. First of all, legislative. What does that mean, legislative? Lawmaking. In other words, the people are saying all lawmaking authority is where? In Congress, where our representatives are. What else are they saying? If anybody comes to us with a supposed law that does not go through Congress, it's no law, really. Because all legislative authority is in Congress. I have some bad news for you today. Do you know that there are more laws coming out of Washington that you and I are expected to live on that do not go through Congress than those that do, in direct violation of the first sentence of this document? And you say, how in the world can that be? Thank you for asking. Bottom under letter B, there's 4 ways this is happening. Number 1, the executive branch began making laws by issuing executive orders and publishing them as new laws in the Federal Register. Let me ask you, can the President give an order? Think about it. Can he give an order? Yes. To whom? Military and anybody in the executive branch. He's their boss. He can give them, that's a lot of people. He can give them orders. But can he give orders that affect your life, where you live, the water you drink, the air you breathe, and every multitude of other things outside the executive branch? No. If those are to be laws, they must be made by representatives of the people. So, with that definition, most of the first president kept within that framework, issuing executive orders to the executive branch. 10, 20, 30, 40 executive orders. Then came Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt had a philosophy that went like this. I decline the view that I can only do what the Constitution says I can do. He said, I believe I can do anything that I as president feel necessary for the nation unless the Constitution forbids me doing it. Wow. What does that mean? I mean, could you ever list everything the president can't do? I mean, that's ridiculous. See, he just had it backwards, didn't he? So, with that philosophy, he issued 1,006 executive orders during his term. These things just began pouring out. This is the progressive era, right? Just began pouring out. My state was coming into the Union at that time. So you got lots of things in there, some that's named Roosevelt. Roosevelt Dam, Roosevelt Lake, Roosevelt this, Roosevelt that. Executive order, just pouring out. And there's some pretty dangerous ones out there. You don't know. Anyway, this is all in violation of the first sentence. Look at number 2. The president was authorized in wartime to set up certain types of regulatory agencies These bodies immediately began issuing thousands of orders that were treated as laws that could be enforced in the courts. This kind of regulation is called administrative law. You got all these agencies of government, and they write what they call rules and regs, rules and regulations. I mean, by the thousands. They're all writing them out. They record them in the Federal Register, and if Congress does not call for a hearing on them, or if they're not declared unconstitutional by the Attorney General, they automatically become law after a certain number of days. Did you know that? These things are just pouring out of Washington. Administrative law. You couldn't hire enough attorneys to keep up with it. And if they wanted to get you on something, they probably could. I use Roundup on the periphery of my garden. You use Roundup here? Or something like it. And I don't know about you, but I always like to put a little more, just a little more in to kind of. And then you read the label. Oh no. Federal law prohibits the use of this product unless it's by strict following of these instructions. In other words, I just broke federal law by putting another half teaspoon of Roundup in my sprayer. Unbelievable. I take a shuttle from where I park my car to the Phoenix airport. And above a few seats in that shuttle bus, it says, federal law requires vacating these seats for seniors or disabled persons. Well, okay, I'm hoping I would do that anyway, even if the sign weren't there. Federal law on a shuttle in Phoenix? Give me a break here. I mean, you know, you step on the top rung of the ladder, you break federal law. They got rules and regulations for ladders. Incredible. This is all administrative law. They're just pouring out. This is not America. This is not the founders' formula. This is not freedom. Look at number 3. The president also began to involve the nation in many new legal obligations with foreign powers by entering into extensive and sometimes secret executive agreements. What the president does when he goes overseas and speaks with a head of state, which is his constitutional duty to do. He's our chief diplomat. And makes an agreement. Well, the Constitution said that's okay as long as whatever he agrees comes back and is ratified by the Senate. It's a treaty. Most of those never come back and get ratified. And some of them are secret. Probably the worst secret that's now out is Yalta. Before World War II was over, the 3 great powers, you remember Stalin, Churchill, and Roosevelt, FDR, sat down at Yalta, which is just north of the Black Sea, and basically divided up the world. Said, well, this thing is over, this is your part, this is your part, this is your part. That was kept secret for 10 years. And in my opinion, was responsible for the Soviet Union expanding out into these satellite countries and literally enslaving millions of people behind the Iron Curtain with very little opposition. And number 4, the Supreme Court also created numerous new laws under the guise of merely interpreting old ones. This is particularly true during the administration of Earl Warren from 54 to 69. This is called judicial legislation. And you think of something. Judicial. Roe versus Wade, that's a great example. You know, where something was so illegal almost everywhere, and to be made legal in one fell swoop. Now, you would think if that's to be done, it ought to be done by the representatives of the people. That's a change of policy if there ever is one. No. Supreme Court, by one vote. Man. Prayer in school, Bible reading in schools, all this stuff, just pouring out. And you say, whoa, what's happening? You might be interested to know this. In some of those years of the Warren Court, did you know that there was not one justice on that court that, when appointed, had any prior substantive judicial experience? which of course is what's happening right now, right? Okay. No judicial experience. Now you would think if you're going to appoint somebody to the highest court of the land to be a judge in the highest court, they should have had some experience either in a lower federal court or a state court, somewhere. No. And it kind of leads you to think, these are not judicial appointments. These are political appointments, including Earl Warren, who had been governor of California when appointed by Eisenhower. Amazing. Well, therefore, away, folks, at the very first sentence to this precious document are being so grossly violated. Now, I want to pause here for a minute. I'll tell you about this. This is the granddaddy of them all. This book was written for the bicentennial in 1987. I love this book. We take a whole semester on this book at our school. And what Dr. Skousen did when he wrote this is said, okay, who wrote this document? So he has pictures of each of the 55 that attended the convention, a little description of them. And then he has a little paragraph that's quoted about them. This paragraph comes from the writings of one of the delegates. His name was Major William Pierce of Georgia. Major William Pierce didn't write what they said in the convention. That was Madison that did the best job of that. He wrote about the character of the person. And I thought I'd just share just 3 or 4 of these with you, because this is amazing. To describe the characters of these people that were at that convention. Gouverneur Morris, remember him? Gouverneur Morris. This is what his colleague from Georgia said about him. One of the geniuses in whom every species of talents combine to render him conspicuous and flourishing in public debate. He winds through all the mazes of rhetoric and throws around him such a glare that he charms, captivates, and leads away the senses of all who hear him. Whoa, you ever met a person like that? Gouverneur Morris. He's there. Here's another one, William Patterson. I wish you could see his picture. He's kind of loose to it. Here's what his colleague says about him. One of those kind of men whose powers break in upon you and create wonder and astonishment. He's a man of great modesty, with looks that bespeak talents of no great extent. Okay, just a couple more here. James Wilson. Oh, James Wilson. 30 Tyrants of Greece. How would he know about that? Listen to this. Ranks among the foremost in legal and political knowledge. Government seems to have been his peculiar study. All the political institutions of the world he knows in detail and can trace the causes and effects of every revolution from the earliest stages of the Grecian Commonwealth down to the present time. I mean, if you were writing a constitution, would you want James Wilson on your team? He was there. He was there. I can't leave this part without telling you what this fellow wrote about Ben Franklin. Here he is. Well known to be the greatest philosopher of the present age. All the operations of nature he seems to understand. The very heavens obey him. And the clouds yield up the lightning to be imprisoned in his rod. He is a most extraordinary man. Well, folks, that's only 4 of them. There's 55 in there. If you believe, as I do, and I think you do, that these were good people. Not perfect, but they were good people. They wanted to be good. If you believe that, here's just a little extra evidence to help support them. These were great people. Certainly not guilty of some of the things they're being accused of nowadays. So that we will not believe. That's why they do this. They don't tear at their policies, at their things that they believe. They tear at their character. Have you noticed that? It's a favorite way of these people. Tear at the character so you won't believe it. The first 200 pages of this book, oh, here's that Theodore Roosevelt quote, by the way. First 200 pages of this book is a lot more historical development than what I've been able to give you this morning. And all the documentation for it is in this book that I told you this morning, and a whole lot more. Then the last 700 pages of this book, what Dr. Skousen did, he took the Constitution and pulled out every little provision that you can do that. Every little one. There's 287 of them. Gave them each a number. Numbers, described where it is, a little history about it. Then he starts quoting the founders about what that provision meant and why they put it into the document. See how valuable this book is? This is wonderful. I love this book. And anyway, I hope you have this on your I Love America shelf, not collecting dust. We've got to use it, right? So anyway, let's see how we run the time here.
Tell us the name and author, please.
The name of the book,
And author.
The Making of America by W. Cleon Skousen, published by our organization, SCCS. We have it on the back table, or I don't know if all of you know this, but we have some order forms back there. If we don't know how much to bring of things, it costs a lot to ship things around, so this is the deal we make. We bring some things, but if we run out back there and you want it, you sign up for it here to be sent to you, you pay for it, and when we get home, we'll send it to you, and we will pay the shipping. That's only for seminars. And that's almost like having it here, but not quite. And then you get it in pristine form, and it's just, okay? That's just a little special. All right, so, let's go here. Okay, we're going to go for another 10 minutes, and we'll, I want you to turn, we're on page 35. We're going to talk a few minutes about some of the 20 powers of Congress. They're all in Article 1, Section 8. Page 35, it says, Rule number 1, Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes. Notice this now, the first use of taxes. To pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. For the common defense and general welfare. Got that? Look at the next sentence. In connection with the taxing power, this clause states that revenues can only be expended for the general welfare of the whole nation as it carries out its list of duties set forth. In other words, the 20 powers. Do we all understand this? They have 20 powers. The general welfare clause says if the federal government spends money on those 20 powers, it can only do it if the expenditure benefits the whole nation. What does that mean? Makes sense. These funds are not to be spent for individuals, special groups, or particular geographical regions. See, that's not general welfare. Do we all understand this? This is so clear in the writings of the founders. I can show you dozens of quotes from them exactly what this means. Well, what happened? Letter A, when Alexander Hamilton became Secretary of Treasury under Washington, he switched. He began to argue that this was a general grant of power. In other words, he began to say Congress can do anything if they consider it welfare. In other words, welfare in general. Well, you think about it, folks. If you list the powers of Congress, Congress has the power to, and I showed you that list, and then you say, oh, and they can do anything else they want to do. That doesn't even make sense. Why list the powers? See, that makes sense. It would really destroy the whole idea of limited government if that's the way it's interpreted, which of course it has. Letter B, Hamilton was immediately opposed by Jefferson and Madison. It's two blanks, Jefferson and Madison, who said, Alex, you know that's not what that meant. You yourself said. I can show you quotes from Alexander Hamilton in the Federalist Papers that shows the correct interpretation of the General Welfare Clause, which he abrogated when he became Secretary of Treasury. Letter C, the founders' original intent prevailed until 1936. What was happening in that time? We had the Depression, And Roosevelt, of course, was elected in 32, and he had a new deal. And his new deal was packed with welfare items. And so as he tried to get these welfare items from Congress, which Congress did, you remember, he was pretty successful in that, the Supreme Court would keep slapping him down and saying, you can't do that, that's against the General Welfare Clause. It doesn't benefit the whole nation, it just benefits a particular group of people. Kept slapping him down. So what did FDR want to do with the Supreme Court? Stack the court, pack the court, right, with 15 members. And he would appoint the others, so he'd always get a majority, and away we go. Congress didn't buy that. But after a while, enough of the court had changed in 1936, where in the Butler case, right in the dictum of the case, it explains, we are now changing our definition of the General Welfare Clause from the Jefferson-Madison interpretation to the Hamiltonian interpretation, and Congress may appropriate money for any good cause. Well, how many good causes can you think of? One? Everybody's got a good cause, or everybody is a good cause. That just opened the floodgates of the federal treasury. Did you know in 1936 the budget was $6 billion to run the federal government? Now it's, what's the latest? $4 trillion? What? I don't know what it is. And most of that is general welfare, is individual, specific welfare in general. Completely different from what the founders intended. Now, on page 36, Roman numeral 2, clause 3 of section 8 says, Congress shall have power to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states. Right? This is the Interstate Commerce Clause. Do you remember what we said, the reason for giving the federal government that power? To ensure what? Ensure the free flow of commerce between the states, and that's your blank letter A, flow. Flow. In other words, this was only meant for the regulation of transportation. Letter B is transportation, not production, not the sale of goods and services going interstate, just transportation, to make sure there was no state that set up boundaries to collect tariffs. There's plenty of quotes from that to show the original intent of the Interstate Commerce Clause. Well, letter C, under the pressure of war and depression, the Supreme Court twisted or reversed traditional cases of interstate commerce and introduced the unconstitutional doctrine that the federal government may regulate anything that affects interstate commerce directly or indirectly. Wow. What doesn't affect interstate commerce indirectly today? I mean, everything is so tied together. So you have sweeping federal regulations coming down over almost any aspect of commerce. For example, under letter D, number 1, intra-transportation of goods. You have a trucker that just drives within the state of Missouri, guess what? He comes under federal regulations. Amazing. See, this is not the founders' formula. Number 2, labor disputes. Why does the federal government claim disputes over, automobile industry, baseball strikes? Well, and they're producing stuff that's going to go interstate. Are they going interstate? Automobile, for example, you got an auto factory, say in Detroit. Where do most people live who work in that factory? Where do they live? In and around Detroit, right? So production, up to this point, the courts ruled production was always a local issue, a state issue, because it was all done within the state. All of a sudden, after this Butler case ruling, you get OSHA, EPA, and all these agencies knocking on the door and saying, we're here from the federal government to inspect your facility. What do you need? Federal government. Interstate Commerce Authority. And all of a sudden, it just opens up that whole situation to federal intrusion. It is incredible what's happening. Oh, I got I gotta show you this. Find it here. Oh yeah, here it is. I cut this out of the U.S. News and World Report, February 11th, 1980. How long we've been doing this. I don't know, you probably can't see it from there, but see the headline anyway? Your Hamburger, 41,000 regulations. This was 30 years ago, by the way. Huh? There's a little cutout here, and it kind of, yeah, okay, catch it, here we go. To be considered grade A fancy, it must flow no more than 9 centimeters in 30 seconds at 69 degrees Fahrenheit. Federally approved catch. Mayonnaise, cheese, tomato, pickles, here we go, pickles. Slices must be between 1/8 and 3/8 inches thick. To be federally approved pickle. Enjoy your hamburger.